The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our conversation surrounding email management best practices. My name is Brian Guidotti, and I am a solutions consultant with Newforma. Today, I am joined by a current Newforma customer, Tom Maleski. He's the BIM manager from PS&S. Welcome, Tom, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Really quickly, going into today's agenda, today we are going to focus on what Newforma does, how we help the AECO industry. We're going to jump into email. Then I'll turn it over to Tom. We'll learn about PS&S. We'll learn about PS&S's email best practices. And then at the end, we'll jump into Q&A. A really quick kind of housekeeping item. If you have questions throughout the webinar, we have a questions pane inside of the GoToWebinar panel. Feel free to ask questions there. I will be monitoring that throughout the webinar, answering questions that are Newforma specific during the webinar. But at the end, we have some time set aside for general questions as well that Tom and I will be able to answer at the end of the webinar. If we're looking at Newforma software, we've been in the industry since 2004. We have a ton of customers and we have a ton of projects. Right now, we're managing 3 million projects, which equates to about 6.6 petabytes of data. We have 73 of the top 100 architecture firms using Newforma and 191 of the top 500 E&R firms that are using the data. And the reason that people end up using Newforma is because we have disparate systems that end up hindering connectivity and challenging collaboration. What a lot of firms do is they go in and they buy project management software, right? Something to help them take care of RFIs, submittals, field reports, action items, etc. And then at the other side, I should say, they also purchase information management pieces of software, right? How do we handle things like email, documents? How do we share those files out? How do we handle all of the different drawings, the models? How do we handle markups? The goal with Newforma is to take both of these kind of separate areas and unite them together so that you have one system to take care of project management and information management. Questions come up during the process of, where is the data associated with this submittal? Where is the data associated with that RFI? And what we want Newforma to do is rake all of the leaves, all of that information, and just go ahead and associate it automatically with the information that's associated with the system. So if I go into a submittal, for example, wouldn't it be nice if I could see all of the documents, all of the emails, all of the correspondence, all of the notes in one spot instead of going into my submittal log, finding that link, and then going into my share drive and trying to find files, and then going into my Outlook and trying to find the correspondence associated with that submittal, because everything is stored in different places. Today, what we want to go over is a piece of that, and we're covering email, right? Correspondence has become a very, very, very difficult thing to manage, because not only are you trying to manage your data associated with your email, but you're trying to associate all of the correspondence associated with the project as a whole. And Newforma allows you to gather email in a few different ways. We're going to be going over one example today with Tom and how his company does it, but I really want to stress that we are a one-size-fits-all program. We want you to be able to kind of utilize all of the different areas where your employees are kind of looking at and collaborating. We want to integrate directly with Outlook. We want you to be able to drag and drop emails directly associated with Newforma. We have a button that allows you to file information into the project. We can integrate with rules and automate that information going into the project. We can create something called project email addressing. And what this does is automatically take emails that are forwarded to a specific email address and put those into Newforma. And then we also just released an Office 365 integration and a Newforma Cloud mobile and web app that allows you to integrate with your Office 365 environment and pull data off of your Office 365 inbox using a mobile application on iOS or Android, and also a Newforma.cloud web page. So we are that kind of one-size-fits-all, kind of take care of email the way that you're doing it today, but let's automate and allow you guys to easily associate that correspondence with the project and really make those connections. With that being said, I will turn it back over to Tom and allow him to talk about PS&S and how they handle email internally.
Great. Good morning, and thank you, Newforma, for giving me the opportunity to discuss this topic of email filing with Newforma Project Center. So I'm Tom Maleski, Senior Associate and BIM Manager at PS&S. I'm a graduate of NJIT in Architecture and Structural Engineering with work experience in architecture, structures, fire protection, plumbing, mechanical, and electrical. At PS&S, I develop and implement the BIM and CAD strategy throughout the office. I provide training, support, and mentoring the staff. And I also manage all this software within the building group. PS&S was established in 1962. We're headquartered in Warren, New Jersey, with 7 regional offices and a couple more on its way. The firm started as a structural engineering firm years ago, and through several mergers, you see the firm that we have today. The firm, we're focused across 7 market sectors of education, energy, utilities, public, healthcare, hospitality, real estate, and the science and tech market. We have a diverse clientele of both public and private entities, some local or regional, but others are national or even worldwide. PS&S also has a high percentage of repeat customers or clients. Several of these clients we have worked for many years across multiple market sectors. So with that said, Newforma email filing. The first is, why did PS&S choose Newforma, and what were we trying to solve? Well, the number one reason was email. And at the time, everyone was storing their emails in PSD files on their local machines, taking up valuable disk space. The extended project teams had no exposure to the information. The PST files were not backed up, and therefore, if the hard drive failed, the information was gone. But that would never happen. So why should I follow my email? Well, for one, it will keep the internal team up to date with the project information. It'll keep your inbox and sent items folders cleaner, and will reduce or eliminate the need to create shared mailboxes once someone retires or leaves the company. So why would I file my email now versus later? The biggest thing is, are you going to remember that email you sent days, weeks, months, or even years later? Probably not. And when someone asks you for the information, I'm sure all you're going to do is go into your inbox, search for that key term or that project, find those 100 emails, and just sync them to the project. And I'm sure most of those or some of those email messages are probably even project related. So what are some of the benefits of filing your email using Newforma? One would be that your emails will be stored in a standard location by Newforma in a folder by the month and year, although there are several other options. When you have to search for your email search is going to be a lot faster in Newforma than it would be sitting on your inbox. Plus, you have the added benefit of filtering across multiple fields of data, and you're searching not just your email, but the entire project team. And then the Newforma system eliminates the issue of duplicated email messages up on the server, since Newforma is keeping track of all that information for you. So initially, the process of syncing email required you to identify your project. And what you would do is inside the Newforma Project Center, and if you went to your All Projects tab, you could put in some key terms up here. Maybe it's the project name or the project number. Once that list is filtered down, you would select the project, you would right-click on it, and select Add in My Projects. So what that does is then, during that process, inside of Outlook, under the Newforma Items to File folder, Newforma would create that new project to allow you to drag and drop that email into that folder. And then it would automatically sync it back up to the server. I mean, this process was pretty simple, took little effort, but we still found that people were not following the emails. So Newforma came out with this automatic email filing system called Forced Email. And how would I set this up for my end users? Well, first off, you need to be a global administrator to enable this functionality. And then inside the Newforma Project Administration portal, you would go to your licensing tab. In there, you would select a user or users, right-click, select Modify the Users to get this dialog box that would appear. And in there, you would go to your email options section and turn on forced email filing when sending through Outlook. And just some, guidance on this dialog box is that, as you can see, I selected multiple users. If I see a checkbox, that means that this setting or this option is selected for both users. If it's unchecked, both users do not have that option selected. And when you see a darkened box like this, that means that the settings are not the same amongst the users. So maybe one person has it checked and another does not. As long as you don't touch it, it's fine. Newforma will understand that and it won't make the setting change. But on this case, what I would do is click on this one to check to have both these users have forced email the option selected. So the email filing process with Newforma, with that option invoked, will actually add only 2 additional clicks to the user. The user creates his email and hits the send button as normal. After the send button is selected, this File in Project dialog box will appear, which will give, hold on. Okay. So the File in Project dialog box will appear, and then listed in here will be broken down by My Projects. So this is that setting that we just selected. Or there will be a My Recent Projects list. The user would select that project. Once a project is selected, the 2 buttons on the bottom of this dialog box will appear, where you can send and file or send and do not file. What would be the reason to select the send and do not file? That would be, maybe it's hey Johnny, I just printed out the drawings, you can pick them up by the plotter. That's a message that I do not need to file to the project. So in that case, I would select the send and do not file. You'll also notice that, my list here is pretty long. You could actually just filter out that list right here in the top by keying in a key term. If you get to this stage and your project is still not showing up in your My Project list or My Recent Projects list, you would select the the ellipse button over here, which will open up your select project dialog box. In here, I would select, or I would key in the project that I'm looking for, hit the search button, and a list would appear on this dialog box here. And then once you select your project, you would select OK. But if you notice, you can actually add that project to your project list. So again, it's really thought out, the whole entire process. So other things is that you still even have the ability to change some email options. So in this dialog box, and you can get to it through Outlook under the More Options dialog. And what will happen here is, like, when I go to send that email, where do I actually want to send that item? In my case, I'm sending mine to my deleted items. Why? Because I already sent it up into Newforma. I don't even need the message on my system. But again, you have full options to set those the way you want. And even if you didn't set those options initially, every time you go to send a email message on that file in project dialog box, you do have the option right here to change it. Another nice option about this is that you do have the ability to create additional email folders. So how the Newforma system saves the email, they'll be sitting up on my email, on my file server. But I could actually create additional folders. For example, my company, we use 2 additional folders called financials and contracts. What the user would do is, when he goes to hit the send button, he picks his project, and then he has the option of selecting the default folder or selecting these defined by us or customized locations. And another great thing about Newforma is that it understands your permissions on your file server. So if a group of people do not have access to the contracts and financials folder on the network, that same user would not have options or would not have the ability to look into those folders through Newforma. Also, you have the ability not just to send your email into the subfolders up above. I actually can send that email to an additional or to another location within Newforma. What are those additional locations? It's the different activity centers. You know, maybe action items or submittals. It's not on this list, but submittals is another one. What's nice about this is that, and I use this for not even just a normal project, but maintaining all of our licenses in-house, is that every time I get an email message for a particular subject, I have an activity center or an action item. I send that email to that action item. It'll be listed in that action item. So it's like a one-stop shop. I can open up that activity, see all the information. I could double-click on the email message, and it would open it up as normal. So what do we do now that everything is inside of Newforma? Well, you can do a search. So in Outlook, you have your search icon right on the panel, which will bring up the enter search phrase and select project dialog box. And as you can see here, this example, I'm searching for the term license. And I'm not really sure what project I really want to search for, but I know it has the word dorm in it. So I put license, dorm, hit my magnifying glass, and it'll give me a listing of projects that have the word dorm in it. Now that I know that's the project I want, I double click on it, and it will only show me the email messages that have the word license in it. The one drawback to the system here through Outlook is I can only search one project at a time. But if you need to search multiple projects, you would just go into the Newforma Project Center software and put in your key term up here, hit the drop-down box for your search, choose your selected projects dialog, check off the projects that you want to search for, and then hit the search button. Newforma will now do a search across multiple projects, and in the dialog box in the Newforma Project Center software, it'll list out all those emails with that key term of cost model. So again, getting your emails into the system, very easy. Once all that email messages are up on that system, it's fast to search that information and have it displayed back to you. And with that, that is kind of what the whole system's all about.
Great, Tom. I really appreciate that. We do have a few questions that came in. Really quickly go through them. One of them that came in rather recently was, can you go more into Newforma search? What does Newforma search on the email message? I think what they were trying to get at was, yeah, that like a few slides back, you showed search for license, and it looks like you're also looking for projects that were associated with dorm.
Correct.
What is Newforma looking for in that email when I search for something like license?
Oh, yeah. Well, so the term will actually be anything in the subject or anything within the body of that message. If there is an attached file on that email, it would actually start to go through that document as well. So not only will I get an email message with a subject that could possibly have the word license in, the word license might be within the body of that email, or again, it may be a PDF attachment, and in there is, here's your license file information. So
Great.
It does a very great search method.
Perfect. I appreciate that. One of the questions was, you showed how you can add an email to a project item, but are you able to create items in Newforma based off of an email?
Well, yeah, like if I'm in my, I don't know if this is what the question's talking about, is like, yeah. So if I'm in my, I'll even go back a few slides here. So say if this message, this particular test message, maybe it is a submittal coming in from a client, because we have this a lot, is that our construction manager is sending us a RFI, or maybe it's a shop drawing request. I can select the email here, select the File in Project button in Outlook, which would then give us a listing of how do I want to file that. And I can file that email as a submittal, as a action item. That's another thing that we get in at times, is that I'll get something from the client or the owner saying, hey, could you modify these drawings? And I mark them up for you. I'm going to take that email, create an action item, and send it out to the responsible parties on the project that are internal to my company, or maybe they're even on the extended project team. So what's great is that I get an email, I can, offload it in many different ways. And again, when it goes through that action item, or whatever that activity center I'm doing, it's a shortcut back to the email message that's going to be docked in the email folder structure. So everything's all interrelated to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, is that relation, right? Because to your example, if I create this as an action item, or if I create it as a submittal, or if I create it as, whatever item might be, it's important to keep all of that data together. So not only do I have all of the documents associated with this work item, but now I also have all the correspondence. So I think that's a really important point, and thank you for touching on that.
Right.
The last question we have is, can you give me an idea of what your email workflow was before the implementation of Newforma? What issues did you run into as a company, and how did Newforma help you solve these issues?
So like if I received an email message in the past, before we had Newforma, we've had Newforma in-house for a little bit over 7 years. Out on our file server, we did have a email folder, but you would select any project, and there'd be like 3 or 4 email messages in that folder. So no one was doing it. And one of the reasons was that if I take this, this test email and I drag and I copy it onto our file server, tomorrow I get another email message with the same subject line of test email. I'm like, oh, I'm going to file this into the project folder, and I copy that message onto that file server. Well, it's going to say, there's a file that already exists with that name. Do you want to overwrite it? I don't know. Yeah, sure, I do want to overwrite it, not knowing that I just overwritten an important email. Just so happened to have the same exact subject line. So that was one of the, the dilemmas that we saw with the old, just drag and drop into a folder without Newforma. Other things would be, maybe I have the message, I also sent it to you, Brian. We both said, hey, it should be in on the file project. We both copy that same email message to the file server. Now I have 2 messages that are exactly the same. So it was kind of hard to distinguish that as well.
Yeah, you bet. And that's a great point.
Right. Well, the only thing you would be able to search for through Windows Explorer is subject, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm not showing all the systems, all the dialogues here, but if you go into the email activity center through Newforma, I would see, who sent it, and I could filter on any of this information, is who sent it, who did it go to, the subject. If there's keywords, you can attach keyword information to it. And so you can, filter down those lists. I have projects that, are upwards to 30,000 email messages. And in a matter of seconds, I could, truncate that down to maybe 8 messages, depending on what I'm trying to search for.
Yeah, absolutely. One more question came in while we were answering that one. We reviewed how to file outgoing messages, but is there a way to automate the filing of incoming emails?
So now I know you touched upon it before we started. Is like, I know you can set up Outlook rules. Mm-hmm. I personally do not do that here, but you could set up a rule that when your incoming email comes in, it would automatically go to, in that case, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is that I would set up the rule to say, okay, when I receive a message from Tom Maleski, it's going to go to this, training number 2 project folder. And then Newforma, at a certain interval, will go through your listing here, your folder structure inside of Outlook, and sync it up to the project. So I'm pretty sure, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, Brian. That is how that system would work.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Now, another thing, okay. And then the other thing is where I get the message in my inbox, if I highlight it, as you know, just like this, I'm highlighting the message, I can always just hit the file and project button right here, or even the quick file button. The quick file button lists your top 10 projects that you customize as what your top 10 projects are.
Yep. And just to expand on that while he has his slide up, what we do is we automatically create over on the left-hand side under that Newforma items to file folder structure. Those are the projects that are associated with what we call my projects, which are your favorites list. So when I add a project to my quote unquote favorites list, it'll automatically create a folder over on that left-hand side. The thought process with Newforma and email filing is that we want to be able to take advantage of the muscle memory that your employees are using to file emails right now. Some people are drag and droppers. Some people have file folders set up. We want to be able to leverage that, right? So we automatically create folders. Some people are what I call CCers, that they CC everyone on the project on every single email that they get. We want to be able to take advantage of that through something that we call project email addressing, which can set up an email address specifically for a project in Newforma. And whenever that email address is copied or forwarded an email, it'll automatically go into Newforma. Some people are what I call do-nothingers, right? And that's where we start talking about the rules integration. That's where we start talking a little bit about the automation. Some companies really want the automation. Some companies don't, in my experience, just because they don't want to kind of roll the dice and have maybe misinformation go into a project. Not every single email with a project number in the subject is going to be a piece of correspondence that you want on that project. So it's really from my experience and what we do as a company when we speak to potential customers or prospects is that we try and figure out what their feelings are about email management and we try and show them a path where Newforma can help them with that. So I hope that was a helpful answer for you.
I mean, that's what's nice about the system too. Is like, I mean, you're describing 5 different options or 5 different ways to file that email, and it's based upon the end user. And it's funny, I just received an email message from one of my guys today because I turned on this forced email filing for him. So then he was saying, well, what do I need to use those folders on the side of my Outlook now? Do I still need to drag and drop? I'm like, no, but you never know. You may get an email in from a client that you still need to drag and drop it or use the button. It's whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, at that point, it's just really whatever you're not replying to, right? Because if you reply to it and hit force file, it'll save it. So
exactly.
Great point.
So.
Well, I appreciate the help, Tom. That is all the questions. So if we go down to the last slide, what we'll do is we'll just kind of invite you guys to answer or ask any questions that you have. We're always here for you. If you have any questions, we have a phone number that you can call. If you thought that this was interesting, please reach out. We're always here to help. I would love to kind of have a conversation with each and every one of you about how Newforma can help you out, what we can do to not only solve your email challenges, but maybe go into the same kind of thought process for files or CA. Kind of that big kind of grand theme of Newforma is how do we take all this information that lives in 5, 6, 7 different places and organize it, rake those leaves, if you will, into one area where I can find, search, and see every single piece of project data associated with the project or multiple projects on a whole. I would again really like to thank Tom. I really appreciate you kind of taking the time out of your day to jump on a webinar with us and kind of show us what PS&S is doing. If you have questions, please reach out. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.